Okay, welcome back. We're on page 597 talking about the differences between all these moving pieces. The mail agent, the submission agent, the transport agent, the delivery agent. And the delivery agent part is kind of weird. The delivery agent is the one who pulls the messages from the transport agent and puts it into your mailbox. Okay? So it says, hey, a message has appeared, and it says, hey, dude, you need to do something with this. And so it says, okay, I know whose mailbox that belongs in, so I'll put it in their mailbox. So typically the MTA and DA are physically combined. I mean, they're showing them here in two separate boxes for clarity, but typically that's just a normal feature of receiving an email, is knowing which mailbox it goes to. Okay, cool. And then the access agent. So there's two different ways you can do an access agent. And you've probably heard these terms, I hope. Maybe you've helped configure somebody's email, like they got a brand new machine and they want to hook up to, to whatever their internet service provider email is. There's a thing called POP, Post Office Protocol, and one called IMAP. Okay, those are the access agents. And there's two different techniques you can use. And so the access agent, even though they don't show it, what goes below the access agent in this diagram is the user agents. Okay. So the first thing they talk about is the user agents. So Microsoft Outlook is a classic example of a user agent, a mail user agent. In our world, we're probably going to use one called bin mail. And there's a couple of others. We're actually going to install a better email client, right? A better user agent than just plain old bin mail. Bin mail's been around a long time, and bin mail's great, but it's really just designed for like scripts or something, where there's hardly any user interface. You know how you can pipe something to, like I could take something and I could pipe it to the printer, right? Using LP. I can pipe it to bin mail and it would send off an email, that kind of thing. So it's really only for scripts and things of that nature. Humans don't typically use bin mail. Okay, and then the submission agents. Okay, so the submission agent is like the receptionist. It says, oh, thank you for submitting a brand new email. Let me figure out what it is I need to do with this. For example, if the mail is let's say I'm using Time Warner, okay? So when Time Warner receives this mail and realizes that it's being sent to another Time Warner customer, right? It doesn't need to go to the transport agent to transport it because you're already there. It can skip right on over to the DA part and say, hey, there's no need for me putting this on the wire because the second customer, the to person, is on the same machine as the from person, right? So it has to, the MSA has some cool things. So typically it sits between the user agent and the transport agent, typically. And it does a lot of cool things for us. One of the things it does is it can do encrypting and decrypting. That's the one that does that. It can also do the digital signing thing. It can do spam filtering and virus filtering for attachments and things like that. Okay, so it's got an awful lot of features. It used to be the MSA's job was pretty simple. It basically is a traffic cop saying, oh, this is local traffic, go here. Oh, this is remote traffic, go over here. Now it's taking on an extraordinarily important role of verifying that digital signatures are correct, or encryption is correct, or this is not spam or is spam, those kinds of things. And it typically listens on port 587. Oddly enough, let's say that you're here on Outlook and you want to know if you're talking directly to an MSA or you're talking directly to an MTA. Okay, maybe you don't know, right? One of the ways to find out is to look at the port number you're configured on. Like if you go into Microsoft Outlook and bring up the mail configuration thing, if you're pointing to port 587, well then you're definitely going to an MSA. If you're pointing to port 25, then you're going directly to a mail transport agent. Okay, so let's talk about the mail transport agent. It gets its job from the MSA or perhaps from a local agent. I mean, your scripts, for example, if I'm writing a script, I could probably send it directly to the MTA. I mean, probably, maybe. So its job, of course, is to send things over the wire. That's what it does for a living. And if you skip the MSA and send it directly to them, and it turns out it's local, it won't get mad at you. It'll say, okay, look, hey, you asked me to put this on the wire, but I'm not gonna, thank you. And it'll just basically, pass it on to the local DA, okay, without putting it on the wire at all. Anyway, so Simple Mail Transport Protocol, SMTP, that's what this thing typically uses. That's port 25. There are a bunch of examples out there. There's one called SendMail. It's been around for quite some time. XM, which is probably gaining an awful lot of popularity these days, and one called Postfix. Also Microsoft Exchange, but I was talking about the ones that you would typically install on a Linux box. Okay. And so we're going to do one of those. And the one we're going to pick isn't necessarily the most impressive one or the best one or even the most popular one. The one we're going to pick is the one that's easiest to configure, because I don't really want to torture you guys. Okay, the local delivery agent, the DA. Okay, all it does is take the emails and puts them in the storage. So an MTA could do this, okay? An MTA could, but it's better to put it through a delivery agent so that that job gets passed off, and so all the MTA does is do network stuff, and this guy just says, hey, this belongs to that mailbox, that belongs to that mailbox, that belongs to that mailbox. Cool. And then the message store. Now, this is complicated because they used to call this the local message store. But that made no sense whatsoever, because my local message store is on a server somewhere in Roadrunner land, okay? I mean, it's not local. In fact, I don't even know where the hell it is. I just type in, mail.twc.com, and somehow magic happens and it gets there. But so where is the message store? We're not talking about the one that's on your PC. So I don't call it the local message store. I just call it the message store. I wish they come up with a better name because it makes it confusing. So this is where the email is stored on your server. So you know how this works. Let's say, for example, you're on Windows and you're using Microsoft Outlook, and you delete a message from Outlook, and you go, oh man, I wish I hadn't have deleted and closed off my recycle bin because I really want that. Well, the likelihood of you going to like the web interface and going up to Roadrunner and finding that deleted message, because it appears it lives in two locations: the message store on the Roadrunner server, and then the copy of that on my machine. Cool. All right. Okay, so in the old days, there was a thing called inbox format, okay, and it was just a flat file. It was just a text, and then basically you could have them individually located, or you could have them all together, and it would just kind of figure it out. I mean, it's kind of weird. The local message store. Things obviously got a little more complicated when we started doing sending attachments and stuff, and then the access agent. This is where we make the differences between using the Post Office Protocol, POP, and the Internet Messaging Access Protocol, IMAP. All right. There's a listing here in the book talking about the advantages, but you really need to pay attention because there's some significant differences between the two choices for Access Agent. So, yes, Microsoft Outlook has a choice. It can either use POP or IMAP for receiving email, but for sending email, it always uses port 25. Okay, you follow me? It always uses SendMail or something similar for going out, but the MSA. So you don't have much of a choice for emails leaving Outlook. It's either going to go to an MSA or an MTA. No choices. However your organization has configured it. But when it comes to whether or not what kind of access agent, I do have a choice. I can have IMAP or POP. So let's go through it. All right. So here's some advantages of using IMAP over POP. POP just basically says, hey man, here's your message, just download them. So as I download them, you could have it configured so it automatically deletes them as you pull them down to your PC, okay? It'll just free up the storage there. And so, like, if you go back 5 seconds later, it's going to say you don't have any email, right? Okay, cool. what can do is, this is weird. If you can actually start reading an email before the rest of them have come down. Okay? It kind of splits it up. Instead of just saying, hang on a second, you got 15 emails, you're going to have to wait. And if there was a big one in there, well, you're just going to have to wait until they all show up. Even though the first one is the only one you're really interested in, but you got to wait for all 15 to come down before you can read that first one. With IMAP, as soon as you see that one, you say, I'd like to read it, and it'll continue to bring down the others. So that's an improvement, isn't it? Okay. And if let's say you're remote and you're on a very, very sketchy, very, very slow internet connection. So maybe you want to just download the headers only, not the actual body of the email, just the headers. So you can look at it and go, screw that, I'm not reading that. In fact, I'm going to delete that one, and that one. They're just crap that's of no interest to you. So you can speed things up by only downloading the things that you want. Cool, by looking at the headers first. And then here's the biggie. The pop guy just blindly copies. If you have 5 new emails since the last time you checked, it's going to have 5 entries in it. It's just going to copy those things to your PC, and then that's it. They're gone. Okay. Now, let's think about this. Here's the scenario. Let's say I typically work off of 2 computers. I have a tablet over here that I use, and I have my desktop computer over here. So I'm at my desktop computer and I'm running POP. And so it goes and grabs the 5 emails that I have, puts them on my main PC, and then erases the stuff on the server. And then I grab my tablet and I go run off, and somebody said, didn't you get that email? And I go, well, yeah, but maybe I didn't read it. Well, you need to read that. So you fire up your tablet, and it says you don't have any new email, and you don't have a copy of that thing. Because when it copied it down and deleted it off the server, the only copy that exists is back home. So the tablet you're carrying around does not contain the emails that you got that time. That's bad. Now what IMAP does, IMAP synchronizes. It doesn't just blindly copy the files down and then delete them from the server. It says, I see you have 5 new emails. I will add them to your list. Boom. Okay? And then I fire up my tablet, which has perhaps been off for a couple of days. When I connect using IMAP, it's going to say, I see you have 10 new emails. The 5 that I got earlier, plus 5 older ones that happened during that period of time. So it does synchronization. It synchronizes the files. So no matter where I go with my tablet, I always get the exact same content if I was sitting at my machine. So this is a big deal. If you check POP, and you have more than one machine, you're gonna be confused and you're gonna be disappointed. If you check IMAP and you have multiple machines, then no matter where you go, no matter what device you're on, every time you go and fire up Outlook, Outlook's gonna say, well, here's all your current stuff and all your old stuff. Now, I'll admit, I've got a machine that, for example, I don't use very often, and maybe it's off for like a month, okay? And so I'm getting ready to go on vacation. It's a true story. I'm getting ready to go on vacation, and I go, I'm not sure how well the internet's going to be on the vacation. So one of the things I do is I pull this laptop out of the closet, dust it off, fire it up, and the first thing I do is go to email and let it, because it's going to come up and say, my God, you're missing like 100 emails, and it'll go, and it might take 5 minutes for it to get them all. So basically, I've synchronized my files so that when I go on vacation and say, hey, I'd like to check emails, it only gives me the ones that are really, really new. And then after I've read them on my laptop, and I come back home and fire up my main machine, those new emails that appeared while I was gone are still there, and they still show up. So that's a significant advantage. You guys got that? Good. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark.